In less than a few months, Brady Cook went from a question mark to the big man on campus. So what if this time next season we're talking about him as an NFL draft pick? Let's talk about his path to the draft next season. Right now, I'm Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, going to check in with the former Tigers in the NBA, including what the heck are the Clippers doing with Kobe Brown and why I don't believe Missouri belongs in the SEC. In baseball. Going to explain that coming up in a little bit here. First, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. And you know what? Doesn't it feel good to have confidence in your quarterback during the offseason? Just such a different feel right now, especially a non-injured quarterback as well. Going to be nice to see Brady Cook and the rest of the Tigers out there this Saturday at 1 o'clock for the black and gold game. But you know what? Considering that difference in perception that I think all us Missouri fans have right now of Brady versus this time last season, well, that just reminds me that perceptions can change awfully quickly in this sport, especially at the quarterback position. So right now, most people aren't really thinking of Brady Cook as a pro player. I don't think he's on the NFL radar, at least at the moment. But again, with a strong senior season, that could really change. This Missouri offense has a chance to be one of the absolute 5-10 elite units in the entire country, in my opinion. So, what does Brady have to do to get to the next level? What does he have to do to at least be draftable next season or to at least improve his NFL stock? Well, quite simply, I think, number one, he's got to be better against pressure. And really, that's true for just about any quarterback at this level, but maybe especially true for Cook. And what I think this is going to come down to for Brady is it'll come down to experience. Another season at quarterback, big-time, high-level football. Brady has seen so much now after the last 2 years of being a starter, and even more importantly, seeing a lot of success last season as well under trying circumstances against some of the elite defenses in all of college football. Of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes were missing some guys offensively, but defensively, that pass defense had everybody you would expect to be back for next season and was an absolute beast. Obviously, that was not the best game for Brady or the Missouri offense. The point is, hey, give him another shot the next time. I bet you he and the Missouri offense have learned some things. So, to me, again, it comes down to experience, and if that continued experience and development for Cook next season results in quicker and better decision-making, in particular under pressure, well, I think that he's got a shot at least being a draftable prospect in the NFL. Think about Brock Purdy, and I understand that's the absolute ceiling, of course, of what Brady Cook can possibly be. But there is a similar physical profile there, but and then here's the thing. Brady Cook doesn't have to be as good as Brock Purdy to be an NFL quarterback. Really what I'm asking is, can Brady Cook, at least right now, I'm asking, can he be an NFL backup? What are the skill sets that it takes to become a career NFL backup? Well, Missouri's got some guys. Ask Blaine Gabbert. Ask Chase Daniel. Heck, maybe ask free agent Drew Lock here coming up in a little bit too. He may be on his way to making a nice career as an NFL backup too. I bet Brady Cook wouldn't mind that money whatsoever, but it's an odd career path as a backup. No question about that. But I will say this, again, comparing Cook to Brock Purdy. Similar sized guys, both about 6'1", 6'2", 200 something, 210 to 220 pounds, something like that. And both guys with what you would say are not flashy arms. Let's put it that way. They don't have Blaine Gabbert or Drew Lock's arm strength. Something more like Chase Daniels' arm strength would be a better comparison for Brady Cook. But quite frankly, I think Cook has better raw physical tools than even Chase Daniel, the greatest quarterback in Mizzou history. I think he's a little bit taller. He's a better runner, in my opinion. So Cook does have his advantages. He has every bit as much of the arm strength as Daniel, if not more, and if not a little bit more, in my opinion. So Cook, I think, while certainly right now, not saying he's a candidate to be a first-day pick or anything like that, but right now he's flying under the radar. And if guys like Bo Nix and guys like Michael Penix, who previously were not thought of as NFL prospects whatsoever, now others are starting to talk themselves into them as potential first-rounders, maybe second, third-rounders, that type of deal. Not crazy at all to think that Brady Cook could very well be a draftable NFL player come next spring. And speaking of football, well, when Missouri joined the SEC, there was definitely a chorus of people that thought that Missouri simply did not belong in the conference in terms of football. Well, I think that the Tigers have proven that is not the case. I think Missouri, especially last season, well, with a couple division championships about a decade ago as well, I think they proved that they fit in this conference quite nicely. Will they ever be Alabama or Georgia? Well, probably not. But hey, time will tell. Unfortunately, I think time is already starting to prove that Missouri does not belong in the SEC in baseball on that particular diamond. And quite honestly, ever since USC and UCLA decided to take their programs to the Big Ten, it's become quite clear to me how badly and really desperately the rest of these sports need to divorce themselves from football and men's basketball. Really, maybe even just divorce themselves from the traditional conference structure entirely, because I've talked a lot about spending, especially in the wake of Desiree Reed-Francois' departure, the spending in the non-revenue sports. I can't personally justify the amount of money it would take to potentially move the needle for Missouri in baseball, for example. Well, I had somebody who's a Missouri baseball fan, apparently, say that if you're not going to spend on those type of sports, then you shouldn't have gone to the SEC in the first place. Well, again, I'm going to half agree with you there. I think Missouri shouldn't have never gone to the SEC in baseball because, quite honestly, I think baseball should obviously remain at Missouri. I'm not saying there shouldn't be Missouri baseball. I'm just saying the idea that they're on the same planet as LSU and the Mississippi schools and the Florida schools and Florida, I should say, and just various Arkansas, for instance. Those schools, it simply does mean more there. The slogan actually fits in this particular case because Missouri does not have the fan base to compare. They do not have the spending to compare. And there's really no evidence that says that even if you spent to those levels, that if, as they said in Field of Dreams, if you built it, would Missouri fans come? I'm not so sure. I just don't see it at this point. Again, not saying that you have to shutter the program, but spending a ton of money to try to compete with programs that are always going to spend way, way more than you and care way more than you. And I'm talking by factors much more than a comparison between Missouri and Georgia football, for instance. Yeah, there's always going to be a gap there, at least in the foreseeable future. But compared to these baseball schools, it's a total chasm. I just think Missouri and a lot of these, frankly, other non-revenue sports would be better off just playing more regionally. Play against Southwest Missouri State, I should say, Southeast Missouri State. Play against Truman, play against Lindenwood, that type of thing. To me, that's a lot more productive and would get you really the same outcome that you're looking for. You want to have women's sports? Hey, me too. I have nothing against women's sports. I just think it's ridiculous when the UCLA softball team has to fly across the country to Rutgers. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think UCLA should be playing Cal and Stanford and maybe Pepperdine. How about that? And coming up on the show, Michael and Jonte Porter's reunion on the court last night got me thinking I need to check in on the rest of the former Tigers, how their NBA seasons are going, and really my disappointment with how the Clippers are using Kobe Brown so far. So let's get to that. But first, let's talk about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. And you know what? Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. And the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder with room for up to 8 in expansive cargo capacity and advanced 4x4 capability. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. That's NissanUSA.com. Cool moment last night after the Denver Nuggets and Toronto Raptors game as Michael Porter Jr. and his brother Jonte exchanged jerseys after the game. This is after Jonte, by the way, has made quite an improbable comeback to the NBA. Really 3 seasons. The 2021 season was the last time we saw Jonte in the league. You would have to have thought, especially after tearing his knee a couple times before even getting to the NBA, that would be probably it for Jonte at that level. So he's actually played pretty darn well for the Raptors, all things considered. And he's actually, played just 11 games, by the way, all the way back in 2021, and now 21 games this season. So obviously he's going to double that total pretty easily. By the way, last night, Jonte with a season-high 14 points, including 4 3-pointers. And indeed, kind of like his brother, at this point, Michael, who will turn 26 this June, is pretty much who he is, I think, at this point in his career. He's an excellent, tall jump shooter. That's basically who he is at this point. Because of the limitations of his back injury that he sustained, maybe injuries, just the various limitations that he now has compared to what he looked like in high school. It's really, again, just amazing that Michael Porter Jr., based on all the medical information I've heard about him over the years, listen, there's a reason this guy who was a presumed top 1 or 2 pick went from that to the 14th overall pick by the Nuggets a few seasons ago, I believe in the 2018 draft. Now, there's a reason he fell that far, and it wasn't a lack of talent. It was all medical stuff. So for both of them to even get to this point, I just thought that was great that they were able to have that moment together. Congrats to both of them, especially to Jonte, who has fought really, really hard to get to this point. And by the way, speaking of somebody who fought hard to get to the NBA, that's basically everybody, right? But no doubt Kobe Brown fought very hard last year, worked incredibly hard on his shooting with Dennis Gates and his staff raising what was a guy who had never shot better than 30% from downtown as a Tiger in 3 years. Well, his senior year, he shot about 45% from the three-point line. And honestly, so far here, listen, let's just put this out here. Number one, clearly Kobe Brown made the correct decision to go to the NBA, a first-round draft pick. He's going to be a millionaire after this at a certain point if he plays his cards right. So at the same time, though, I thought the Clippers would have afforded more opportunities for Kobe when he was drafted. I would have thought, well, number one, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two of the stars for the Clippers, well, they've played more than I would have thought. A couple of the more injury-prone players of the last few years, well, that's cut into some of Kobe's opportunities. And also the Clippers added James Harden as well, another huge superstar name and a guy who plays on the wing like Kobe does for the most part in the NBA, and a guy who's going to take a lot of minutes and attention. So far, unfortunately, the circumstances haven't been as conducive to him developing his game and getting more action than I would have thought. And so far this season, Kobe is mostly just a three-point shooter. Nearly 2/3 of his attempts are threes, and he's only making 30% of them so far. Just 2 free throw attempts on the entire season for Kobe, by the way. So basically, he's just standing around waiting for people to pass him the ball so he can shoot an open three-pointer. And unfortunately, a lot of wings these days in the NBA, that's kind of what you become, especially on a team with a lot of superstar ball handlers, ball-dominant players, I should say, like the Clippers, who, by the way, do share the ball well. But with those three guys on the team, man, it's tough to kind of get yours and find a way to develop and find a footing in this league. So there has been times when Kobe has gone down to the Clippers G League organizations, or the minor leagues of basketball, if you will, to get some action. And that makes some sense for sure, because at a certain point, him just sitting on the bench for 44 minutes and getting up a couple shots every once in a while and just flying to the next town doesn't really do much for your development, because in the NBA, practices, especially these days, are really few and far between. With an 82-game schedule, a lot of coaches and players especially have figured out these days, we don't want to just grind these guys into the ground before the playoffs even start. Now, Utah's Jordan Clarkson, well, he's arguably, despite just playing one season at Missouri, he's maybe had the best career of any NBA player who's ever played at Missouri. Got to be him or John Sundvold, maybe Linus Kleza. It's probably Clarkson, considering the length of his career at this point. And in fact, well, Jordan's going to turn 32 this summer, and he's got career low field goal percentage overall, career low in three-point shooting too. Seems to me that a guy who's always relied on that really quick first step that he's had in particular, it seems like his career could be winding down fairly soon. Also, speaking of Kobe Brown, by the way, his teammate last year, and speaking of one-year players at Mizzou, Demoy Hodge, a very memorable young man, has not played for the Lakers since December 15th. Like Kobe, he's been up and down between the G League and the Lakers, though for now it seems like he is essentially a G League player at this point, which, again, for developmental purposes, that's actually okay. It really is. It may be not, obviously, if you're looking to impress the ladies out in Hollywood, yes, you'd rather be on the Lakers. If you're looking to catch Kendall Jenner's eye, I think maybe Jordan Clarkson did that one time. But anyway, this isn't entertainment tonight. But seriously, I think for your actual development, while the glitz and the glamour of the crypto.com arena is awfully nice, if you're actually going to develop as a basketball player, you're probably better off being in Fresno or wherever the heck Demoy Hodge is spending his time these days. But you know what? I got one more NBA update from a former Mizzou basketball player, and actually, he was a victim of a really unfortunate injury at the beginning of this season. And this injury actually shows something from another sport as well, believe it or not, for Mizzou football. shows that they actually, the athletic department itself actually dodged a bullet here when it comes to injury prevention of their own. A good step taken by DRF back in the day. So I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about here coming up. But first, let's talk about FanDuel, because it's time to say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all, or you can even bet on the Champions League today. Yes, you know me. I like me some Champions League soccer. Basically, I just like any sports on during the day, during the week. I'll take what I can get. Can Napoli take down Barcelona? Well, probably not, but I'm going to watch and find out. But either way, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. That's Locked On Sports Today. And you know what? Back in the day, many, many years ago now, when I was in the journalism school, I was taught a fancy term for people like myself. We were called opinion leaders. And I'd like to think maybe an opinion I helped lead over the last few years on Locked On Mizzou was, hey, we need to cover up this stupid track around Faurot Field at some point. I called it the slip and slide, is what I called it, because if a player was running at a high rate of speed with football cleats on and they hit that track, there was basically no slowing down. And I was thinking back to 2015 when the St. Louis Rams were still around, and in that final season at the Trans World Dome, well, there was an exposed track, just like there was at Missouri for many years. Basically an asphalt or, I don't know, concrete type track, a hard surface, put it that way, and a fairly slick one at that, it would seem. Well, Reggie Bush, that was his last game in the NFL, because when he ran out of bounds, he slid on that surface, and when he did so, his knee awkwardly buckled, and he blew it out, and he never played in the NFL again. I very much wanted to avoid that at Faurot Field, and a lot of people made fun of me for trying to, I don't know, well, it's never happened before, so what are you worried about? My whole thing was, you're right, it's never happened before, but look at what happens when these guys are sliding on the track. Not hard to imagine. So my point in bringing all of this up is fortunately, while Missouri did eventually cover the track and took some safety measures there, good call, by the way, I'm giving thumbs up to that decision. Well, unfortunately, Drew Smith was not so lucky, because apparently in Cleveland, for years and years, there's been some type of gap between the court and the bench. Behind the bench, the court, there's some type of uneven gap here. Let's actually listen. Let's hear from Drew Smith himself. He said, quote, "I remember during walkthrough when I sat there ready for shoot around, just kind of thinking, oh, there's this kind of weird drop off, just the separation between the bench and the court. But you know, when you're playing, you're not thinking about where I was going to land or if I was going to miss the court. When I flew by on the shot contest, my left foot landed and my right foot went between the chair and the bench. As soon as it happened, I knew what happened. I knew I just fell into that little hole. I would say I knew right away. I knew it wasn't good." And unfortunately, yeah, it wasn't good for Drew whatsoever. And despite getting off to a promising start for the Miami Heat this season, including playing over 20 minutes in a couple ball games, the first few games of the season, Drew Smith had to miss the entirety of the rest of this season which what was called a third-degree right knee sprain. So fortunately, he didn't blow out any ligaments, but my goodness, a third-degree right knee sprain, obviously severe enough to cost him 5 to 6 months of a basketball season. And the really heartbreaking thing about all this is Drew Smith had obviously worked incredibly hard, much like Jonte Porter, to stick around and grind and be at the bottom of that NBA roster like Demoy Hodge kind of is right now. That's a tough place to be. Yeah, that is not the glamorous lifestyle of LeBron James or Jimmy Butler. I'll promise you that, these superstar type of players. Yeah, you're making good money. You are, but you're having to grind constantly, and your position in life is constantly in question. And for Drew Smith, who is obviously a tough, hard-nosed guy, for him to have his season ended like that, a crucial season for him, a young guy who is, again, he's young, but he's not 21 years old. He's got to be 25 now by now, I would say. And that's just really cruel to have something like that has been noticed for seasons, that people like LeBron James have even brought up that, yeah, the NBA should probably look into addressing this. For everybody to just sort of ignore it and wait for something horrible to happen, well, Drew Smith, unfortunately, he paid the price there. He was a great Tiger, a real tough guy who played through a brutal ankle injury, a brutal ankle turn his junior season. To me, just showed a ton of grit and toughness, and a really good player too, and underappreciated and under maybe forgotten about almost already at this point in Drew Smith's career. But anyway, I just want Drew to know that I haven't forgotten about him. And by the way, just a bummer of an injury there. Hopefully he's able to come back and make something out of his NBA career. But you know what? Thanks as always for joining me here on Locked On Mizzou. Hopefully you've found that you've made something out of your day here today. And hopefully you're out listening to this on a bike ride or something, maybe hitting some golf balls, because it is awfully nice out. And speaking of golf balls, I think the driving range is calling me right now. So until next time, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.